The station pretended to sleep, but nothing with that many blinking lights ever truly rested. I had learned this during my third year repairing machines that no longer had manuals and people who no longer had patience. The air smelled faintly of ozone and reheated noodles, a combination that made you question your life choices if you inhaled too deeply. I was elbow-deep in a maintenance panel, arguing quietly with a translator unit that insisted my name meant nutrient paste, when I noticed someone standing far too still behind me. She didn't cough. She didn't shuffle. She just existed, which on a station like this was suspicious behavior. When I turned, I saw a woman who looked human at first glance, same posture, same tired eyes, but her ears stretched long and elegant along the sides of her head, tapering like careful calligraphy. They twitched when I stared, which made me immediately look away, because staring at strangers' ears felt rude in any known culture. "Are you broken too?" I asked, nodding at the sparking panel, "or are you here to yell at me about it?" She blinked as if the question had not appeared in her rehearsed list of disasters. "I am not broken," she said carefully. "I am socially malfunctioning." That was new. I straightened, wiping grease on my sleeve. Her clothing was formal in the way uniforms always are, meant to represent dignity, currently representing exhaustion. The station's ambient AI chimed overhead, cheerfully announcing a matrimonial compliance deadline in 6 languages. Her ears drooped a fraction. "I really hate that announcement," she said. "It follows me." I laughed before I could stop myself. "It follows everyone. Yesterday it proposed to a cargo crate." She did not laugh. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the walls were listening, which they probably were. "In my society," she said, "remaining unmarried is considered a public failure, a contagious one." "That's rough," I said. "In mine, it's just called Tuesday." Her mouth twitched despite herself. Relief, or something like it, passed through her features, quickly chased by panic. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, too synchronized to be casual. Her long ears stiffened, catching sounds mine couldn't. "They are coming," she said, "and you are the only unregistered adult male within acceptable distance." I opened my mouth to ask several sensible questions, but she bowed instead, deep, formal, desperate. "Please," she said, "marry me or pretend to. I will explain the details later, very quickly, probably while running." Behind her, the compliance officer's scanners hummed to life, cheerful as wedding bells. Running with someone you've just agreed to possibly marry is a strange way to begin any relationship, especially when you don't know her name, and the floor occasionally tries to scan your bones. The corridor lights shifted to compliance blue behind us, which the station AI had once described as calming. It was not calming, it was the color of being politely arrested. "Left," she said, tugging my sleeve. "No, your other left." "I only have the standard issue," I panted, nearly colliding with a sanitation drone that beeped in disappointment. "You could have led with coffee before lifelong commitment." "My apologies," she said. "There was no time. Also, caffeine is illegal during courtship rituals." "That explains a lot about your society," I muttered. We ducked into a cargo lift just as the officers rounded the corner, their scanners chirping like excited pets. The doors slid shut, and for a moment the only sound was our breathing and the lift's voice announcing, in a sultry tone, that it was temporarily uncertified for romance-related activities. She leaned against the wall, ears flicking in rapid patterns. "I am sorry," she said. "I should not have involved you." "You begged a stranger to marry you while being chased by bureaucracy," I said. "Honestly, I've had worse days." She looked at me, really looked this time, as if trying to map me into some internal system that was already flashing errors. "My name is Saelith," she said, "and if we are to survive the next cycle, you will need to claim me." That's a bold phrasing. "In public," she added quickly, "legally, emotionally optional." The lift lurched, then stalled. A holographic panel flickered to life, projecting a cheerful avatar holding interlocking rings. Saelith groaned. "The station has detected a potential union," the avatar sang. Congratulations. Would you like to proceed with preliminary compatibility assessment? I stared at the hologram. Does it always do that? Yes, Saelith said flatly. It enjoys irony. Questions poured out of her in quick bursts. Age, genetic markers, dietary intolerances, opinions on communal sleeping schedules. When I hesitated, she prompted me with whispered suggestions, some helpful, some clearly lies. You do not glow during sleep, she hissed. Say no. I don't glow, I said. The avatar paused. Disappointing but acceptable. Outside, Boots stopped near the lift. Saelith's ears flattened. If they scan us and we are not registered as bonded, she said, I will be reclaimed. Reclaimed sounds bad. It is. The avatar chimed again. Compatibility score, insufficient. Emotional sincerity detected at only 12%. I laughed sharp and nervous. 12%, that's generous. Saelith surprised me then. She reached for my hand, fingers cool, steady. Her ears lifted, angling toward me instead of the danger outside. Adjust the reading, she said softly. He is afraid. The system recalibrated. Fear acknowledged, it said. Sincerity updated. The lift doors remained closed. Outside, the scanners hesitated. Inside, I realized I was still holding her hand and not letting go. The lift eventually decided that suspense was bad for its internal circuits and began moving again with a sulky hum. When the doors opened, we stepped out into a residential ring that smelled like recycled air and regret. I let go of Saelith's hand only because the corridor demanded single-file walking, which felt like an unfair design choice at that moment. We need a bonded address, she said, walking fast. If the system cannot locate us within 1 hour, it will assume deception. Great, I said. I love games with invisible timers. She stopped abruptly in front of a narrow door and pressed her palm to the panel. The lock blinked, confused, then surrendered. Inside was my apartment, which meant the station had already made some assumptions about my life that I hadn't agreed to. Saelith looked around, ears slowly rotating as if cataloging every sound. This is small. It's cozy, I said defensively. The mold and I have an understanding. The room chimed. A projection bloomed above us, displaying our faces side by side, already slightly adjusted to look more compatible than we felt. The station AI spoke with gentle authority. Bonded partners are encouraged to synchronize domestic behaviors. Saelith stiffened. What does that mean? I think it wants us to argue about the thermostat, I said. She almost smiled. We sat awkwardly on opposite ends of the sleeping unit while the system ran background checks. Every few seconds it asked invasive questions, which Saelith answered with formal precision, and I answered with sarcasm. The AI flagged my tone twice and suggested mindfulness breathing. Do you often joke when under threat? Saelith asked quietly. Only when the alternative is screaming, I said. You. I recite regulations, she said. They make me feel less alone. That landed harder than expected. The AI announced a temporary bond certificate, valid for 48 hours. Outside, the compliance patrol redirected, satisfied for now. Saelith's shoulders sagged as if someone had finally turned gravity back on. I did not intend this, she said, but my society believes partnership creates worth. Without it, I am excess. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling where faint stars flickered through a damaged panel. Where I'm from, worth isn't supposed to be assigned by relationship status. We just pretend it isn't, then panic quietly. Her ears angled toward me. You are strange. I get that a lot. Silence settled, not uncomfortable, just new. The AI dimmed the lights and suggested rest cycles for emotional bonding. Saelith made a face. We can ignore it, she said. Please, I said. I'm still processing how I became a fiancé in under 10 minutes. She hesitated, then lay down on the far edge of the unit, hands folded, ears carefully tucked. After a moment she glanced at me. Thank you, she said, for not running. I smiled into the dim light. Give it time. The station decided morning had arrived whether we agreed or not. Lights brightened with theatrical enthusiasm, and the AI announced a bonded partner wellness check, which felt invasive for a relationship less than a day old. Saelith sat up instantly, ears flaring as if bracing for impact. "It is listening," she whispered. "It always is," I said. "Yesterday it complimented my sleep posture." Her expression suggested she was reconsidering marrying into my life choices. A projection unfolded above the room, listing shared activities we were encouraged strongly to complete: nutrient intake together, emotional calibration dialogue, voluntary physical proximity. Saelith stared at the list like it had personally offended her ancestors. "This is excessive," she said. "You should see its anniversary package," I said. "Very aggressive candles." We attempted breakfast. The dispenser produced 2 bowls of something beige and steaming. Saelith poked her suspiciously. "This smells like apology," she said. "It tastes like regret," I said, taking a bite. "But it keeps you alive, allegedly." Her ears tilted forward as she watched me chew, then she took a careful sip. Her face did something complicated, then relaxed. "It is not poison," she said, sounding relieved. High praise. Between bites she explained more of her world, not formally, not like a report, but in fragments. Match councils, genetic forecasts, public compatibility rankings displayed in city squares. Humor crept in despite the bitterness, especially when she described a childhood suitor rejected for insufficient conversational variance. "He spoke only of weather patterns," she said, "on multiple planets." "That's a crime everywhere," I said. The AI interrupted, requesting an emotional calibration dialogue. We were instructed to face each other. Saelith's ears flushed a deeper shade, which I assumed was the equivalent of blushing. "State one thing you appreciate about your partner," the AI said. Saelith froze. I shrugged. "She's very brave, also excellent at running." The system hummed approvingly. She looked at me surprised, then composed herself. "He does not ask for ownership. That is unusual." The AI paused longer this time. "Authenticity increasing," it said. Outside, the station thrummed with distant traffic and lives that had nothing to do with us. Inside, something shifted, subtle, unsettling. Not romance, not obligation, just the strange intimacy of 2 people pretending long enough to notice each other. Later, a message blinked onto the wall. "Mandatory cultural integration review scheduled." Saelith's ears drooped. "They will test us," she said. "Not just legality, belief." I leaned back, hands behind my head. "Good thing I'm very convincing when confused." She laughed, then quiet, surprised, real. The sound lingered longer than the station's hum. For the first time since she'd found me, the desperation eased. Not gone, just lighter. And that somehow felt more dangerous than the chase. The review chamber was shaped like a compromise. Half organic curves, half sharp metal lines, as if even the architecture couldn't agree on what it believed. Saelith and I stood on the marked circle, close enough that our shoulders brushed when the floor subtly adjusted our positions. The system liked symmetry. It trusted symmetry more than honesty. A ring of observers shimmered into existence, their forms rendered just vague enough to be unsettling. Compliance officials, cultural analysts, and at least one algorithm that hummed smugly. Saelith's ears angled backward, catching frequencies my skull stubbornly ignored. "Remember," she murmured, barely moving her mouth, "do not contradict me unless necessary." "Define necessary." "If I look at you like this," she said, flicking one ear sharply. "Ah, the murder ear, got it." The lead interface spoke, its voice layered and calm. "You will now demonstrate cultural alignment and mutual intent." I raised my hand. "Is there a written portion? I test better when nervous." Ignored, fair. We were instructed to recount how we met. Saelith began with formal accuracy, precise and careful, describing the moment she approached me as if it were a historical event. When it was my turn, I added details the system hadn't asked for: my broken translator, the noodle smell, my immediate regret. A ripple passed through the observers. "Humor detected," the interface said. Explain its function. It keeps panic from becoming a lifestyle, I said. Saelith's ear flicked. Approval, I hoped. Next came the bonding resonance test. The floor vibrated softly, projecting a shared neural field meant to measure emotional coherence. Saelith stiffened as the sensation washed over us, memories brushing against each other, not images but impressions. Her isolation, my carefully curated loneliness. The system pulsed brighter. Emotional variance high, it noted. Yet compatible. Saelith exhaled slowly. That is unusual. I've been called that before, I said. The interface shifted tactics. State your intentions toward one another. Saelith hesitated. The pause stretched, dangerous. Then she spoke, voice steady but softer than before. I intend survival, dignity, choice. All eyes, real and simulated, turned to me. I swallowed. I intend not to hand her back to a system that decided she was defective for being alone. The hum changed pitch. Intent accepted, the interface said, almost reluctantly. As the chamber powered down, Saelith's ears lifted, trembling slightly. She looked at me, something unreadable crossing her face. You did not have to say that, she said. I know, I replied, but it felt true. For a moment the station was quiet. No announcements, no prompts, just the aftermath of words that couldn't be retracted. Then the interface added, review inconclusive, further observation required. Saelith groaned, we are now interesting. Dangerous place to be, I said, smiling despite the tension. She surprised me by smiling back. Being interesting, it turned out, came with a schedule. The station began checking on us with the enthusiasm of a bored god. Every few hours, a new prompt appeared, requesting updates on our emotional alignment, dietary synchronization, or long-term reproductive projections. I learned more about my own biological future in one afternoon than I had in my entire life, none of it flattering. Saelith took it worse. They are predicting my happiness, she said, staring at a floating chart that kept trying to round her emotions into neat percentages. It feels invasive. Welcome to married life, I said. Apparently I'll develop back pain at 42. Her ears twitched despite herself. The authorities escalated from observation to involvement. Cultural liaisons arrived, pleasant, relentless beings who smiled too much and asked questions that sounded gentle until you answered them wrong. One asked us to reenact a moment of spontaneous affection. Saelith froze, ears locking in panic. I leaned in and whispered, if it helps, I once pretended to enjoy a coworker's poetry reading. She snorted, loudly. The liaison blinked, confused, while the system logged authentic response. Later, alone again, Saelith paced the small room. They are adjusting the criteria, she said. Our sincerity is exceeding acceptable parameters. That sounds like a compliment, I said. In my society, she replied, it means the system feels threatened. As if summoned by her words, a message arrived. Permanent bond evaluation pending. Conditions attached. Residency restrictions. Behavioral expectations. Our lives neatly compressed into clauses. Saelith's shoulders sagged. If I accept, I am safe, she said. If I refuse, I return to nothing. I felt the weight of it settle between us. This had started as a joke, a chase, a loophole. Somewhere along the way, it had become a decision with teeth. We could run, I offered weakly. I hear unregistered moons are lovely this time of cycle. She smiled sadly. You would lose everything. I shrugged. I'd lose a lot, everything's dramatic. She stepped closer, ears angled toward me, listening not to the station but to the space between us. You are not obligated, she said. You were never obligated. I know, I said, that's the problem. The station lights dimmed, waiting. Systems do that when they think they're winning. Saelith reached out, taking my hand the way she had in the lift, steady, deliberate. If we choose this, she said, it must be because we decide to, not because we are afraid. I squeezed her fingers. Good, I said. I'm terrible at being told what to feel. Somewhere deep in the station, an algorithm recalculated, uneasy. The decision chamber was quieter than the others, as if it had learned that silence made people honest. The station gathered its attention inward, lights dimmed to a thoughtful glow, systems waiting like an audience that promised not to interrupt. Saelith stood beside me, ears lifted and steady, no longer scanning for danger but listening forward toward whatever came next. The interface appeared, stripped of ornament. Permanent bond confirmation required, it said. Consent must be mutual and uncoerced. I cleared my throat. For the record, no one is holding a scanner to my head. Statement logged, the interface replied. Humor acknowledged. Saelith looked at me, really looked, not through fear or necessity but with a calm that hadn't been there when we first ran. Once, she said, I believed survival meant obedience. I believed worth could be assigned. Her ears shifted, catching the subtle frequencies of the room. I no longer believe that. The system hesitated. It did that a lot around her now. I thought of the man I'd been before, content to stay unnoticed, repairing broken things because machines didn't ask questions. I used to think avoiding choice was the same as freedom, I said. Turns out it's just hiding with better lighting. Saelith smiled, not desperate, not grateful, just present. We joined hands, not because the system suggested it, but because neither of us wanted to stand alone anymore. The interface recalculated, quietly frantic. Warning, it said. Outcome deviates from predictive models. That's been a theme, I said. The bond registered, not as a triumph, not as compliance, but as something the system couldn't label without inventing new language. Conditions dissolved, restrictions retracted. Somewhere a regulation committee would be very annoyed. Later, the station returned to its usual noise. Announcements resumed. Drones drifted. Life continued, stubborn and imperfect. Saelith and I walked the corridor without hurry, without pursuit. What now? I asked. She considered it, ears tilting thoughtfully. Now, she said, we decide what marriage means to us. That sounds suspiciously healthy. She laughed, free and bright, and the sound carried farther than it should have. I realized then that I wasn't fixing broken machines anymore. I was building something uncertain, unscripted, alive. And for the first time, I didn't want to disappear into the background. The station blinked.